Hi, I'm TL Hill. I'm a strategy professor at Fox School of Business, Temple University. I'm here to talk about empathy and imagination. Really, it's about how bringing empathy into the classroom created an incredible amount of excitement for me and my students in our consulting capstone that we teach. Um, the challenge that I face is that I teach a consulting capstone, so all the students have to do projects for live clients, and somehow they have to catch up to the experience of these clients in just a few short weeks, bring in new insight, new information, things that will change the strategy of the company. It's really exciting. It's incredibly hard work. They read a lot. There's a tremendous amount of data to analyze, and it's really hard to keep the energy up and to come up with the imagination so they can create genuine insights that the client might not have thought about themselves. And we've found that bringing empathy into the classroom in the form of observations, day-in-the-life experiences, stories, and participation provides that energy and that imagination that's pretty essential to make this pretty strenuous class work. So I just want to give you 4 examples. Really 5 examples, but in 4 areas. So the first one is that just simple observation can change the student's perspective. It can sort of bust their assumptions, get them seeing things in a different way. The picture here on the left is the control center for a large municipal transit agency. And the students' project was all about making that agency much more data-driven. They were so excited. You know, they can think about artificial intelligence, machine learning, cool new systems, and they go to the control center and they see the complexity, and it's just amazing. And then they noticed they're using CRT tubes from probably the last century. There's making phone calls on a landline phone with like a real cord connecting it, right? So the project begins to shift, and it becomes, yes, about the technology, but it becomes as much about the people, the processes, the reward structures, the training. It becomes a much bigger and richer project, but also one in which their assumptions and how they were thinking about this as mostly a technology or a data-driven project becomes a people and process-driven project. And kind of in reverse, but still similar kind of thing, we had another group of students whose job was to help a European steel company come to the United States and open a rolling mill. And they were thinking, you know, dark satanic mills, nobody would want to work there, they're horrible, they're dirty, and like there's no manufacturing left in the US. Why would they want to do this? So they go and they visit a competitor, they see the state of the art, and all of a sudden the questions change to, oh, there's actually very few people employed here. And the people employed here have to have very high levels of technical proficiency. And it's now, again, more of an HR problem in some ways, because where we're going to find the people in the US workforce who've got the education to work at the level of technological sophistication required. And when we go and try to get state help with, you know, real estate or whatever, how many jobs are created? 4, 10, 20 in the plant? It's not even enough to move the political needle. So the excitement of Industry 4.0 is palpable, but on the other hand, the questions for the project really shift. So it busts their assumptions, gets them thinking in a different way. At a deeper level, sometimes spending more time, spending a day in the life, can make a deeper difference. So in this particular project, it had to do with private equity. Again, very exciting, working for a big firm up in New York that does roll-ups, and you know, they're doing the financial analysis, and they called, I think, 200 potential companies that might join the roll-up in some way or another. They're doing really great, very sort of high-level financial research. And one of the students took it upon herself to spend a day in the life with the subject of this. And the subject of all this was process serving, was serving subpoenas to people who were behind in their debts, to people going through civil proceedings, maybe a divorce, child custody. And she rode around with someone whose job does to do this. And they had lots of conversation, drank way too much coffee. And she saw the tension, she saw the tedium, she saw the paperwork requirements, the moments of like real like danger. And that one day of insights made all of the phone calls and all the financial analysis come to life, and actually identified a couple of very small tweaks in the processes and in the software supporting the processes that essentially became the engine for the entire roll-up. So spending that day, looking at the mundane details, talking to the actual people in the front lines, creating empathy for the actual problems, can transform even something as cold-hearted as a private equity deal. Another one, which in a lot of ways it starts with a warm heart, but it had to open it even further, which is a group of students working for an organization called Philadelphia Ceasefire. And Ceasefire looks at violence as basically shootings as a public health issue, something that needs to be interrupted, vaccinated. There's a variety of things that they do. And in fact, they've been shown their interventions work. They reduce violence by about 30% in the neighborhoods in which they operate, which is unlike almost every other intervention in the country. There's thousands of these. 3 or 4 of them actually work. This is one of them that actually works. But getting money turns out to be really hard. Who's going to pay for this? For the politicians, it's easier and more politically beneficial to spread money around the neighborhoods. For the insurance companies, well, there's not that many shootings, even in a place like Philadelphia. There might be 350 a year, and maybe your insurance company is worrying about 70 of them, and it's a rounding error compared to diabetes or something like that. So nobody wants to pay for it. The incentives don't line up right, and so they start to think about social return on investment. They start to think about emergency room and chronic pain, and it was all very cut and dried, nice analysis. They were getting small returns on investment. But then they read this book, Just Mercy, about the ways in which the death penalty and mass incarceration are used in racially unequal ways across the South, or really across the country. And those stories open their eye to the larger systemic issues, the ways in which families are disrupted, the quality of life in entire communities can be disrupted. But what looks like one isolated shooting can ripple out across a community on both the victim side and the quote unquote perpetrator side. And the expenses to society are tremendous. And so that opening of their hearts, opening of the mind, seeing a broader context led to a very sophisticated social return on investment analysis, and the kind of case that they were able to bring successfully to the city and to the state. Because when you're looking at a 30-to-1 return on investment, all of a sudden people's eyes open up. And that was only for a fraction it was only for the measurable fraction of the actual impacts. And the last example has to do with a team that was really losing its way, and it just didn't feel like there was any hope, because they're working for a trade association, and it's granted, it's sustainable farming. It's it feels good. They're producing gorgeous produce, but it's it's a membership organization of farmers. They're far away from the city. Who really wants to support another business association, right? And especially with memberships going down, all the data was saying, this type of model of membership it's just gone. It's just not going to work anymore. And people are happy to buy sustainable food. Those trends are good, but they want to buy. They're going to spend their money buying stuff, not giving money to some farmer that they've never met. And so they were really getting themselves ready to say that this is a dumb idea. It's never going to work. You're never going to get consumers to support the farmers except by buying the produce. But then they went and they actually spent time on the farms, did a little bit of farm work, compared what it was like doing farm work on a conventional farm with a sustainable farm. And that experience and that empathy, they began to, they caught kind of the passion about how, the earth smells different, the food looks different, tastes different. You can begin to see it as almost a romantic connection to the past, but also a spiritual connection to a different kind of way of life, a way of connecting food and health and happiness. And by seeing and feeling that difference, capturing a little bit of that passion, they began to relook at the same data and see another way forward, a way in which they could use social media and some interesting marketing tactics to build a contributorship, a support group for this sort of non-member supporters of this organization, so that the possibility of wonderful, sustainable food is available to a broader group of people. So 4 or 5 little stories, a couple of takeaways. First, when you're doing research, please visit. Firsthand observations, bust assumptions, get you thinking in a different way. Take a little bit more time than just a cursory hour visit, because sometimes the mundane details that only come up when you spend a day in the life, you really talk to the people that you're in some sense studying, the industries that you're working with. Those details can change the conversation, change the research, change the recommendations. And there's a way in which listening with an open heart gives you a broader view of the world, improves your financials, but frankly, it also increases the connection to the project, to the company that you're working with, and the nonprofit that you're working with. And and the energy that you bring to the work that you do. And especially if you can not just listen with an open heart, but experience the passion, actually get your hands, in this case, literally dirty. You can see possibilities in the data that you may not been able to see otherwise. From a teaching perspective, finding ways to bring empathy to the research is hard. It takes a certain amount of creativity, but that's creativity that makes it fun. And when you see the joy, the energy, the imagination it brings to the classroom, it's well worth it. So thanks.